Welcome into Moments That Mattered. Round 12 is in the books. I'm stepping in once again for our fearless leader, Jack Keverin. My name's Pete Hooley, and as always, I'm joined by the great man, Derek Rucker. Ruck, we're 12 rounds down. There was plenty of moving and shaking going on in this round. We have to start with a team that many people expected to be a championship favourite probably going into this round in Melbourne United. They dropped two, and they dropped two in fashion that we don't normally see from a Dean Vickerman coach team.
Well, it kind of started last Sunday when they played the Brisbane Bullets at John Cain Arena, and they were exposed on the defensive end. Brisbane shot 64% from the field, put 122 on United. So you figured at that point, Pete, you figured Dino was going to gather and rally the troops, and they're going to come up big time defensively. Man, it didn't happen. Illawarra went through them, and yesterday, Southeast Melbourne came back in the second half, and that was a really disappointing loss. You know, offensively, they're really good, Pete, but it's the defensive end where they've made their mark for so many years and won championships based on those performances. It's not there.
Well, Delhi said in the post-game press conference that he's pissed off, as the whole team is, with the way they're playing. Let's go back to Friday night in particular, because that was potentially a game of the season that it was hyped up to be. 1 versus 2 of the Illawarra Hawks coming into town. They'd lost 9 straight in John Cain Arena versus United and the Phoenix. We all thought it was going to be a dogfight. It was early, but then the Hawks just put them to the sword. And Melbourne United, especially rebounding-wise, everyone was left wondering what's going on.
Well, they couldn't contain Tyler Harvey and Sam Froling. And Sam Froling, we know he loves to play against Melbourne United. He's proven it now. He proved it last year in the semifinal series. And again, he's been really good against them this season. But the guy that's changing the game is Tyler Harvey. And how can United handle these guys? And the reality is, Pete, United have guards in their 30s. And if anything falls off in your performance, it's your ability to defend in one-on-one matchups as you advance in age. So that puts more emphasis now on their scheme, and they've got to rally around and figure out how do they contain some of these elite performers in the NBL that play primarily on the perimeter.
They were putting up exceptional defensive numbers at the beginning of the season. It was probably that New Zealand game at John Cain Arena where they blew them out, where we've started to see that defensive mentality shift that we normally don't see from Dean Vickerman coach teams. You talk about Shea Ely, Matthew Dellavedova, Flynn Cameron. They've given up 3 straight 100-plus point games to the opposition. I know the league's up scoring-wise, which we love, but do you have any significant concerns about this Melbourne United team, especially on the defensive end?
I do, and Pete, the most alarming aspect of giving up that 100-plus each game is, now granted, yesterday was technically a road game, but it wasn't a road game. All 3 of these games have been in Melbourne. And you can kind of live with substandard defensive performances on the road, but when they're happening right on your lawn, right on your home court, that's really shocking to your system. You've been there before. It's really humiliating as an individual. It's embarrassing as a team. And Melbourne United, right through that organization, they expect that the players, the coaches, uphold that defensive standard. And right now, Pete, it's not getting done. And maybe it's a personnel thing. Is it strategic? It's all probably. And look, people are also pointing to the fact that Chris Golding's not in the lineup. Now, would his offensive performance and the way he was playing, would that perhaps alleviate some of the burden on their defensive struggles? Possibly, but not to the extent to totally correct this problem that they're experiencing at the moment.
We talk about Chris Golding being out. It's no surprise they've struggled in areas with a guy who was an MVP candidate before getting hurt. We know he was on an all-world heater shooting the ball from deep. But Marcus Lee missing these last 2 games, and he missed one in New Zealand as well. You talk about the defensive struggles. Are we overlooking and understating how big of an impact he is for them defensively?
I think we are. And the thing about Marcus is he gives comfort to a Rob Lowe, to a Kyle Bowen, to a Jack White. Just knowing he's out there, he's a really good insurance policy as the back line of defense, and he shoots a high percentage also. So when he gets the ball offensively, his conversion rate is high. And right now, absent that, I think that they probably lose a plus 10 points per game with Marcus Lee not being available.
Well, the skid that Melbourne United's on, having lost 3 straight, there'll be some soul searching going on. We know that. That's what Dean Vickerman tries to figure out. But on a positive note, it was announced a few days ago, Dash Daniels, the exciting next star, has committed. 2026 draft prospect, 16 years old. Ruck, I was facing shelves at IGA at 16, and this kid is destined for big things. It's a great to keep him here in the NBL as a next star, and Melbourne United got his signature.
Yeah, terrific achievement from everybody involved. And it's great to see Dash get a chance to play for a team that, based on what I've read with his quotes, he really has kind of idolized a lot about what Melbourne United does. And again, this is the importance of making sure that when you build your NBL organization, it has no weak links, because you open yourself up to possibilities like getting a young next star like Dash Daniels into your program. But Pete, the Daniels family right now is really on a heater. Dice is playing unbelievable basketball. Dash is a next star. It's really exciting to see. And, you know, this is the next wave of people, families that have been involved in basketball for generations now. And the Daniels are kind of one of the new wave of this current crop.
It's exciting. As you said, the Daniels family, we're looking forward to seeing what Dash Daniels can do. 16 years old, he's going to join Karim Lopez in that next Stars 2026 class. You mentioned the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix. They got the big win in the throwdown. We know how heated that gets, and it continues to build up as a rivalry. But the Phoenix as a whole, a different proposition now for Melbourne United. We know they play all their games on the road in January because of the Australian Open, but they play games at the State Basketball Centre too. They're slowly building, Nathan Sobey in particular. What is the ceiling of this Phoenix group?
You know, I think they could be a top 4 team. I like what's happened in the past couple of rounds. Now, you can look at that Brisbane loss on Thursday night as disappointing, and it kind of was. But Pete, within that game, they had a 15-point lead. They had a chance to run away with that game. They didn't know what to do to kind of close out on the road. And that's an area where they need to improve if they intend to try and finish in that top 4. But at home in Melbourne, they're really good. And this is the second time now they've taken down Melbourne United. They've got some big ones coming up. I believe they host Adelaide. And Adelaide, Brisbane, Southeast Melbourne, Tasmania, they're all in that cluster right now, competing and battling. So it's imperative that you win your home games against those teams that you're trying to kind of escape in that peer group mix.
We've been talking about some individuals from the Phoenix who have been very good under Josh King. And Nathan Sobey, a lot of people say you take the good with the bad at times, but he was terrific in the throwdown, 6 steals, his energy. Josh King spoke about him. But it's also no surprise what they did to Melbourne on the back of an aggressive Geordie Hunter. This is the Geordie Hunter a lot of people expected. And when he wanted to attack, he was finishing over people, finishing through people. And this is kind of that next evolution we're expecting from him.
Well, Pete, it's amazing what happens when a pro athlete feels like he was embarrassed. And Tyrell Harrison really got the better of Geordie Hunter up here on Thursday night. And I love that Geordie took that personal, came out there yesterday and went to work. Now, he's being assisted with much better basketball play by Nathan Sobey. And all those people who are harsh and critical of Sobey, make sure you give him his credit when he's deserving, because the past few rounds he's starting to play good basketball. Also, it was great to see Derek Walton Jr. back out there navigating and directing the offense. He was really balanced yesterday, Pete. And didn't they seem a lot more aggressive, but yet settled at the same time? And I think Josh King would have been beyond elated with that performance, especially getting in front of their home crowd.
You're spot on, Rock. That fourth quarter, the composure from Derek Walton Jr. That's the Derek Walton Jr. a lot of people have been waiting to see. He's been battling injuries, but to do that, missing so much time in the clutches, it's a positive sign for the Phoenix. You spoke about it. They welcome the Adelaide 36ers to town this weekend. This is a massive game. You talk about the logjam in the middle of the NBL standings. Adelaide have struggled to go on the road. They come with another impressive win in Montrez's first game back over New Zealand. Montrez was a monster, but Kendric Davis is just quietly putting together. I feel like if it wasn't for Bryce Cotton being otherworldly right now, we'd be talking a lot more about Kendric Davis, and we need to give him his flowers.
You're correct. And he's kind of supplanted PJC, Parker Jackson Cartwright, in the past few weeks, given what New Zealand's going through. that whole thing has kind of fallen off. But now Kendric Davis is starting to show the real talent that he has. I love the fact that he hooks his teammates up as well as scores the basketball himself. But Adelaide's success ultimately is going to be based on, can Montrez continue to perform at a high level, and can Isaac Humphries continue to make critical impact in basketball games? I think right now Kendric is unstoppable. I don't think we have to worry about him. You can kind of stamp his performances in concrete, but can Montrez give you those amazing performances when they go on the road, Pete? Can Adelaide as a unit, can they defend when they go on the road, Pete? Because defensively, they're terrible.
Terrible is probably putting it lightly, isn't it? Because again, it's not just on the road, but at home defensively, they have struggled, but they just have more points. And again, it's probably the home crowd, that sense of being comfortable where they're just going to score a lot more. What do they have to do defensively on the road to try and get enough stops to win?
I mean, maybe you slow your tempo down a little bit on the offensive end and kind of check the other team's ability to get high quality possessions. I don't know. It's a tough one because then you don't want to go away from your identity, which is high octane basketball. And Pete, you're kind of the guru when it comes to how you need to play in this league, the statistics that go with how you need to play in this league in order to win championships. Pete, maybe this year turns out to be different, man. Maybe a juggernaut offensively that lies outside the top four defensively. Maybe this is the year that they crack a championship. It can't be top four only that wins championships forever. There has to be an anomaly here, and maybe this is the year. The other team is Perth. Perth are like, to hell with your defensive stuff. Catch us. We're putting up numbers. We've got the best scoring guy in the league, perhaps in the history of the league, and he is on a heater. Come catch us.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up, Ruck. So I'm going to ask you it this way before we get on to Perth. You ask, is this the year where Offence might just be able to win a championship? Right now, if we had a semi-final series between the Adelaide 36ers and the Tasmania Jack Jumpers, do you give Adelaide enough to get that done in a 3-game series where we've seen Tassie been there and done that on the defensive end?
Okay, who's got home court advantage, Pete?
Oh, that's going to come down to it. If I say Tassie, I'm going to give it away. So let's move on to Perth. That's going to change everything, Ruck. I'm going to read some numbers for you, Ruck. You've been around the league a long time. You've seen stats. You've seen guys go on heaters. But over the last 4 games, 48 points per game, 65% from the floor, 58% from 3, and 93% from the line to go with 5 assists. You run out of words to describe this man in Bryce Cotton.
You know, you go total fanboy when you're watching someone perform like this. And right now, it doesn't matter what you do to Bryce. You almost have to put a guy and a half on him away from the ball just to ensure that he's not getting quality touches. But now, as soon as he touches it, his ISO game right now, Pete, is so elevated. His self-belief. Now, this is a guy who's one of the most confident players we've ever seen in the league. He's so intelligent. His basketball IQ is supreme. But now you give him the ball, it's too late. We've seen him just isolate. He's torching everybody. Small guys, bigger guys, so-called defensive stoppers. It's not mattering right now. And how you disrupt this run, you gotta sell out entirely on the defensive end and be like, you know what? Dylan Windler, you go and beat us. Keanu Pender, you go and beat us, but we're not letting Bryce Cotton get 30 plus. And at the same time, we love to see it. It's so exciting. And I think the true credit that Bryce is receiving from high-level historic players who understand how difficult it is to do what he's currently doing, it's amazing. And I'm sure, you know, your peer group, the veterans of the league, all these guys that have watched this league for decades, you know, they're in awe right now. And I think that's the ultimate compliment to Bryce Cotton.
Spot on, Ruck, and again, we're loving, enjoying it. Fanboy's the right way to talk about it because it's hard to try and be a professional analyst and commentator when you're watching this man do his thing. And again, I don't know about you, but I've got no issues with this man trying to chase that 40 points when they're up 20 at the end of that game against Cairns. If you just get to an opportunity to do what he is doing, you're allowed to have that little bit of extra grace period to chase it in the end because you've worked so hard to put yourself in that chance.
And, he's fortunate in that he has an ex-baller, a high-level scorer and shooter as his head coach. And John really understands what it means emotionally, what it can do to the team collectively. The enthusiasm, Pete, can you imagine right now how insufferable it is to be out in Perth if you're not a member of the Red Army and visiting right now? This city would be electric around this one man. And I'm not saying Bryce is a one-man team. It's a very good basketball team. But right now, they're riding the wave of an iconic run from Bryce Cotton. And a lot of the credit must also go to John Riley and the coaching staff for allowing Bryce to evolve within season in their system.
Well said, Ruck. And again, can't wait to see what's going on. He's got a big few matchups ahead. But before we wrap this up, just a couple of things to touch on. Are we, as NBL fans, as everybody, are we sleeping on the Sydney Kings when they get another win defensively, they lock down in the clutch, and finally they've got a massive run of home games coming up where they start to win those, if Melbourne drop a couple, all of a sudden they're second or top two on the ladder, and this team we know has the talent to win it all.
They do, and right now they're one of three teams, in my opinion, who the schedule is going to benefit for the balance of NBL 25, and that's Illawarra, Tasmania, and the Sydney Kings. Each of them have only played 6 home games. They all have the ability to make their home courts really, really tough place for visiting teams to try and come in and get wins. Yesterday, Pete, I thought that was a massive victory because it proved to the Sydney Kings that they can go out and lock down one of the best offensive teams and one of the hottest offensive teams in the league. Outscored yesterday Brisbane 27-8 in the fourth quarter. Brisbane were up 9. Tony Smith-Milner hits a 3 to put Brisbane up 73-64 late in the third quarter. Brad Rosen and I are looking at each other like, this doesn't look good for Sydney. And then just like that, Jalen Adams starts going crazy. They defended really well. I think they limited Brisbane to like 4 points in 6 minutes in that fourth quarter. And there was a huge moment at the end of that game. Adams comes down and knocks down the 3 at the horn to end the game. Pete, the celebration from the Sydney Kings, it didn't match the importance of the shot. It was like something was released within that team. Something was released viscerally in the crowd, and it hit us all. And I said, that shot right there is going to be something that this team builds off of. And they go down to New Zealand, and it's a very winnable game. They're going to go into Christmas Day, most likely, Pete, 11-7 after being in a bit of strife just a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, they're definitely a team to watch. They've got the talent. They're starting to put it all together. You mentioned getting hot at the right time. Before I let you go, Tasmania Jack Jumpers, they've made a move. They've parted ways with Craig Sword. They bring in a new import who is going to complement. He seems like the perfect Scott Roth type. Now, I ask you this. Have they done this on the back of the form they've currently got, thinking, we're around the mark here. If we just make a little bit of a move, who knows what we can achieve? Because, again, we've been around long enough to know that if Tassie sneak into a play-in tournament, if they even get to a top 4 spot somehow, you don't want to play them in the postseason.
And right now, Tassie, they've won 5 in a row, Pete. And the timing, I thought, was a little bit weird to make this move. And the hard part about Craig Sword is he obviously wasn't a Scott Roth type of player because Scott wasn't willing to give him consistent, good quality minutes. However, in Sword's defense, when he was on the court, his metrics looked pretty good, Pete. But it just obviously was not the fit. Ian Hummer becomes available. I imagine they were probably playing the waiting game to decide when they ultimately pull the pin. And now that they've done it, it doesn't take much. Scott does better with less talent, with less opportunity than anyone else in the league. So Tassie are dangerous. They've got a run of home games now. If they win 80% of those games, you can put them right in the play-in at a minimum.
Ruck, it's a pleasure as always. We love catching up with you every Monday. But before I let you go, the Christmas Day doubleheader it's coming. It's coming quick. Have you already started planning? You got something special in store for us?
I have. I'm working on my suit. I like to do a little suit every year, Pete. I'm working on it. I'm trying to decide how bold and brash I go this year, but something's coming.
Well, I'm looking forward to that. We love you, Derek Rucker. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. This has been Moments That Mattered. We'll see you next week.